There comes a moment in every soul's journey when it must awaken from the sleep of the world. A gentle whisper rises from within, faint at first, like a breeze brushing through leaves, asking you to remember. Not to remember the things that happened in time, but to remember who you are beyond time. Beneath the roles, beneath the names, beneath the weight of pain and the noise of the mind, there is an essence, pure and untouched, waiting to be remembered. That essence is your healing. Healing is not something you chase in the world. It's not hidden in a book or wrapped inside the approval of others or locked away in the arms of a relationship. Healing is a homecoming, a quiet return to the divine spark that has never left you. Though you may have wandered far in thought, in fear, in forgetting, healing is not a process of fixing what's broken. It's a revelation that you were never broken at all. It is the undoing of every lie you believed about yourself when you were too young to know better. We came into this world whole. We arrived with nothing but breath and being and a radiant trust in the unseen. But then somewhere along the way, we were taught to forget. We were taught to question our worth, to doubt our voice, to bury our magic beneath layers of guilt and shame and unworthiness. We learned to perform, to please, to protect ourselves from the pain of not being seen. And in that survival, we began to wear masks so well that even we forgot who was underneath them. But you were not born to be a mask. You were born to be a light. And though the world may have convinced you otherwise, that light has not gone out. It simply waits in stillness, beneath the noise of the ego, beneath the story of your suffering, beneath the pain that you've mistaken for your identity. Healing begins when you stop searching for yourself in the wounds and begin listening to the quiet remembering in your soul. You are not the story. You are the awareness watching it unfold. We are so deeply conditioned to identify with pain, to say, this happened to me, and so this is who I am. But you are not what happened to you. You are what survived it. You are what witnessed it. And more than that, you are what was never touched by it. There is a part of you, call it the soul, the higher self, the eternal observer that has never been stained by any trauma, any betrayal, or any past. That part of you is the healer. And it doesn't need to do anything but be remembered. The moment you stop clinging to the identity of the wounded self, the healing begins. The moment you look in the mirror and say, I am not this pain, I am not this ego, I am not this fear, something sacred opens. The energy you were using to defend your pain becomes the energy you can now use to remember your truth. You cannot awaken and hold on to your story at the same time. At some point, you must choose which one you will carry. And when you finally choose truth, healing is no longer an effort, it becomes your natural state. Healing is not a destination, it is a return. And you are not late to your return. The soul doesn't rush. It doesn't measure success in milestones. It waits patiently until you're ready to stop identifying with what you are not. You can fall apart 1,000 times, and the soul will still whisper, you are whole. You can build an identity around pain, and the soul will still remind you, this is not who you are. You can forget your light entirely, and still the soul will guide you gently back to it. This is the grace of being. Forgiveness is one of the doors to remembering. Not forgiveness as a favor to the past, but as a release of your own chains. When you forgive, you say, I no longer need this story to define me. You return the energy you gave away to anger, to regret, to bitterness, and you reclaim it for your joy, for your presence, for your peace. Forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. It's saying, I will no longer bind my identity to what happened. That's power. That's freedom. That's healing. So, ask yourself not with judgment, but with deep compassion, what are you still holding on to that you no longer need? What belief, what story, what name have you accepted that has kept you from remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget? Who are you without that pain? Who are you without that resentment? Who are you when you're not performing, not pleasing, not pretending? The ego will resist these questions. The ego will tell you healing is impossible unless the world changes first. It will say, you can't be at peace until they apologize, until life gives you back what it took. But the soul knows differently. The soul knows that your freedom is never dependent on anything outside of you. It is your birthright. The moment you claim that birthright, the healing begins not because anything changed, but because you remembered that nothing needed to. You've been searching for healing as if it was lost. But healing is not something to find, it's something to allow. It's been inside you all along, waiting for your permission to bloom. The soul doesn't force itself into your awareness. It waits. It waits until the noise grows too loud, until the roles become too heavy, until the pain becomes too tight to carry. And then, like a breath you forgot you were holding, it reminds you, come back, come home, come within. And so here we are, not at the beginning and not at the end, but at the threshold, a place of remembering. A place where the mask can fall, where the armor can melt, and where the child you once were can speak again. That child didn't need to be healed. That child just needed to be seen. And when you see yourself with the eyes of love, that child returns not to relive the wounds, but to remind you how to live again. The child within you never disappeared. It only grew quiet beneath the noise of expectation. It only dimmed its light when the world told it that shining too brightly was dangerous. It only stepped back when rejection felt like death. But it never ceased to exist. It waited, it watched, it learned your sadness like a language, and yet it never stopped dreaming in the voice of truth. Healing is letting that child speak again. It is allowing your innocent Seno, your naivety, but your sacred, untouchable, innocent Seto rise back into your life, not as weakness, but as divine power. You see, the world teaches you to armor up, to toughen, to become cynical in the name of survival. But healing is the reversal of that armor. It is the radical courage to feel again, to hope again, to believe in something invisible again, not because life guaranteed it, but because your soul remembers it. This is not regression, this is resurrection. The ego tells you that if you soften, you'll break. But the truth is, it's only in your softening that you'll remember you were never breakable to begin with. Only the persona breaks. Only the illusion shatters. Who you really are is indestructible. There's a tenderness at the core of your being. It does not need to prove itself. It doesn't scream to be heard. It doesn't grasp to be chosen. It simply is. Like the sun that shines without needing applause, like the ocean that doesn't explain its waves, like the wind that never asks permission to move. You are made of that same quiet divinity. And when you stop performing, when you stop defending, when you stop hiding, you begin to vibrate with your original frequency. That's what healing feels like, a return to your natural vibration. But to return, you must be willing to release. You must be willing to shed the layers you believed you needed to survive. The identities, the defenses, the roles, even the spiritual masks that tell you you're only lovable when you're healing. No. You are lovable now. You are whole now. Healing doesn't begin when you get rid of your wounds. It begins when you stop being ashamed of them. You don't need to cover your cracks. You need to see that the light gets in through them. Let them shine. There is no spiritual awakening without honesty. And honesty means standing naked before yourself and admitting, I forgot who I was. Not as a failure, but as a doorway. Because every honest admission becomes a key. And every key opens a door back to your soul. You were not meant to know all the answers. You were meant to remember the truth that can't be spoken, only felt. The truth that says, you are loved. Not for what you do, but for who you are beneath all doing. You are eternal, you are enough, and you are already home. Look at the trees. They do not try to become anything. They do not strive to impress. They do not force their growth. They surrender to it. They allow the seasons to move through them, and they do not panic when the leaves fall. They know the falling is part of the cycle. So why do you mourn every leaf that falls from your life? Why do you panic when a season ends? The soul is not worried. It trusts the shedding. It knows that everything you lose that is not aligned with your truth is not loss, it is liberation. Healing is remembering that life is always working with you, not against you. Even the pain was not a punishment. It was a teacher. Even the heartbreak was not a curse. It was an initiation. Even the silence you feared was not emptiness, it was space, sacred space, where the voice of your soul could be heard again. So stop running from the quiet. Stop filling every moment with noise, just to avoid your own presence. You are not empty. You are spacious. You are not lost. You are in the process of remembering. There's no need to rush your healing. The soul unfolds at the pace of trust. And trust means letting go of the timeline, letting go of the old calendar that says, I should be further by now. Says who? Healing is not linear. It spirals. It loops. It deepens. Sometimes you revisit an old pain not because you failed, but because your soul is ready to meet it with more love. Don't judge the return. Embrace it as an invitation. A chance to finally hold yourself where once you abandon yourself, that is not weakness. That is mastery. And as you keep walking this spiral path, you begin to notice something profound. You are becoming more you. Not a better version, a truer one. The one you were before the world whispered its lies. Before shame took root. Before self-doubt claimed your name. And that truer self does not chase. It does not beg. It does not shrink. It breathes. It trusts. It radiates. That self is your essence, and no amount of forgetting can erase it. The soul is not diminished by forgetfulness. It waits patiently, lovingly, silently, until you are ready to hear it again. And now, perhaps you are. Perhaps this very moment is the turning point. Not the dramatic kind with flashing signs, but the subtle kind, the kind where you pause, breathe, and decide, I'm ready to come home. Not to the past, not to the future, but to the sacred stillness of now, where the past has no grip and the future holds no fear. Just the presence of your own divinity whispering, you've never left. You only closed your eyes. Now open them. Healing is the opening of those eyes. It is the softening of the grip. It is the exhale after years of holding your breath. It is the sacred yes to the life you've already been given. You don't need to find a new you. You need to remove everything that isn't you. The guilt, the shame, the false pride, the need to prove, the hunger for validation. These are not signs of your truth. They are signs of your forgetting. And as you release them, something remarkable happens. You begin to remember, not just intellectually, but viscerally, soulfully, cellularly. You remember that you are peace, not the kind you find in silence, but the kind that is silence, the kind that is untouched by noise. You remember that you are love, not the kind you receive, but the kind you radiate effortlessly when you stop hiding who you are. You remember that you are light, not because you try to shine, but because light is what you are made of. Healing is not becoming more spiritual, it is becoming more you. And that is the most sacred path of all. And so we continue deeper into the sacred remembering, not to learn something new, but to return to what has always been true. Healing is not the pursuit of light, it is the falling away of everything that made you forget you already are it. It is the peeling back of layers, the gentle release of false stories, the unraveling of tightly held illusions. It's the soul's quiet celebration every time you say, this is not me, and let go. Let go of the need to be understood by everyone. You are not here to fit into the mind of another. You are here to be the fullest expression of your truth, even if that truth is met with silence or resistance or misunderstanding. The healing path requires that you love yourself enough to be misunderstood and still not shrink. You don't need agreement to validate your spirit. The soul has never needed applause. It only needs your permission to be free. Let go of the need to be perfect. Perfection is the enemy of authenticity. And authenticity is the birthplace of healing. Your cracks are not flaws, they are entry points for grace. Your tears are not weaknesses, they are sacred rivers that carry pain out of the body. Stop editing yourself into someone digestible. Stop shrinking your truth so others won't choke on it. You were not sent here to be palatable. You were sent here to be a force of light, to remember your own fire and let it warm the world. And let go of the guilt that says you must earn rest, earn peace, earn joy. These are your natural states. You don't need to earn what you already are. The soul is not in debt. It does not keep score. That's the voice of the ego voice that believes everything must be earned, that healing must be deserved. But healing is not a transaction. It is a birthright. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to laugh, even when things aren't perfect. You are allowed to experience joy without earning it through suffering. This too is part of the remembering. Let go of the belief that time heals all wounds. Time doesn't heal. Awareness does. Time may hide the pain, but only presence can transform it. Only when you meet yourself in full honesty without judgment, without resistance does the alchemy begin. Healing happens when you stop running. When you sit with your pain like an old friend and say, I see you, I hear you, you don't have to scream anymore. The moment you stop abandoning yourself is the moment healing begins. You may be thinking, but I've already tried to heal. I've done the work. I've read the books. Why do I still hurt? Because healing is not about consuming more knowledge. It's about embodying the truth you already know. You don't heal by thinking your way out. You heal by feeling your way through. You don't heal by bypassing your pain with positivity. You heal by making space for the pain and choosing to love yourself in it. This is not weakness. This is divine courage. The soul isn't asking you to be positive. It's asking you to be present, to be here. Now, to stop escaping through the past or the future and return to the breath you are taking in this moment. That breath is sacred. That breath is your access point to the infinite. You don't need to reach for some faraway enlightenment. The present moment is the doorway. And healing is nothing more than remembering how to live inside that doorway fully and without shame. Shame, let's talk about it. The silent killer of the soul's voice. Shame thrives in secrecy. It grows in silence, but it cannot survive in the light. When you bring compassion to the places you once hid, shame dissolves. You are not the worst thing you've done. You are not the story someone told about you. You are not the mask you wore to survive. You are the awareness behind it all. You are the one who saw it, who lived it, and who still, despite it, longs to love. To heal is to love again, to love yourself again. Not just the polished parts, but the raw and aching parts, the grieving parts, the doubting parts, the messy, human, trembling parts. The soul doesn't discriminate. It sees all of you and calls all of it sacred. When you begin to see yourself through the eyes of your soul, you stop needing others to approve of you. You stop needing the world to mirror your worth because you've remembered what the world could never teach you. You are already worthy. Your healing doesn't require their apology. It doesn't require them to change. It doesn't require the past to be different. It only requires your willingness to reclaim yourself, from everything that convinced you that you were not whole. The moment you say, I don't need the outside to change for me to be free, you remember? You remember that the soul was never waiting for justice, it was waiting for your presence. You were never powerless, only disconnected. This disconnection is the real illness. Not sadness, not anxiety, not fear. These are symptoms. The root is the disconnection from your source. Your healing begins when you reconnect, not to an idea, not to a philosophy, but to the direct, felt presence of your own being, the silence that is listening right now, the space that holds this moment, the essence that cannot be spoken, but always is. Call it God, call it spirit, call it love, but know that it is not out there. It is you. It is in you. It is what you are. Healing is remembering that God was never absent, that the universe never abandoned you, that love never left. Only your thoughts did. Only your mind wandered. Only the ego constructed a story of separation. But separation was the illusion. Union is the truth. And every breath you take in remembrance brings you closer not to some destination, but to the divine intimacy of your own soul. You do not need to be anything but what you already are to be whole. You do not need to prove your readiness. You are ready now. You do not need to ask for permission. You are allowed now. You do not need to wait for the right time. This is the time. This is the sacred now. This is the holy moment. And healing is simply your choice to meet it, to surrender to it, to say yes to it again and again, until that yes becomes your way of being. You are not here to perform healing. You are here to embody truth. You are not here to impress anyone with your progress. You are here to liberate yourself. You are not here to become someone new. You are here to return to who you were before the world made you forget. And that you, that sacred, luminous, eternal you has always been enough. You were not sent here to suffer your way into wholeness. You were sent here to awaken through the human experience, not be buried beneath it. You are not meant to carry the weight of everything that happened as proof that you are broken. You are meant to walk through it and emerge radiant in your remembrance. Pain is not your identity. It is a portal. And healing is what happens when you step through that portal without dragging the entire story behind you. You do not owe the world an explanation for your freedom. You only owe your soul the truth of your return. Every time you choose to pause, to breathe, to honor your inner world instead of performing for the outer one, you are healing. Every time you stop running from your sadness and sit with it like a teacher, you are reclaiming your light. Every time you interrupt the cycle of self-judgment with compassion, you are remembering the original innocence that still lives in you. You are not healing in the eyes of the world. You are healing in the language of the Sula, silent, sacred inner unfolding that needs no witness, only willingness. Do not confuse healing with becoming more acceptable. You do not need to be more palatable, more agreeable, more anything. Healing is not self-improvement. It is self-remembrance. It is not about becoming worthy. It is about knowing you always were. The soul doesn't compare timelines. It doesn't ask, why are you still here? It asks, can you love yourself here? Because wherever you are, love is available. Grace is available. Freedom is available. Right now. Not after the storm, but in it. You were not created to carry guilt like a second skin. Guilt is not your teacher. Truth is. Guilt says, I am wrong. Truth says, I forgot. Guilt clings to the wound. Truth holds the wound with clarity and says, you don't need to hide anymore. There is no transformation in shame. Only in awareness, only in softness, only in light. Healing comes when you stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know. You did not fail by forgetting. You were simply waiting for the right moment to remember. And this breath, this silence, this still awareness, this is the moment. Don't look elsewhere for your wholeness. Don't wait for permission from a world that doesn't even know your soul. Your healing cannot be approved or denied by anyone else. It is yours. And you do not need anyone to validate your becoming. You only need to trust it. Let the stillness be your affirmation. Let the peace that follows your truth be your guide. When your soul is aligned, the rest becomes quiet. You do not need to know where this path leads. The mind craves clarity. The soul craves trust. And trust is the birthplace of healing. Not certainty, not evidence, but surrender. Surrender is not weakness. It is the highest expression of strength. It says, I don't need to control what's ahead because I know who I am now. And that knowing is enough to carry you through any darkness. You do not need all the answers when you're walking with the light of your own presence. There is no shame in forgetting. The forgetting was part of the sacred design. How else could you learn compassion unless you first knew what it was to feel separate? How else could you embody grace unless you first wrestled with judgment? How else could you awaken unless you first fell asleep? Every moment of disconnection was never a detour. It was a preparation. It was shaping you, softening you, cracking the shell so the light could reach in and the truth could rise out. You are not late to your healing. You are not behind. You are exactly where your soul has guided you to be. Even when it didn't look like progress, your spirit was evolving. Even in the stillness, even in the setbacks, even in the grief, you were remembering something ancient and eternal. You were learning to see with the eyes of love. You were learning to hear with the ears of presence. You were learning to feel not through the lens of fear, but through the frequency of truth. Your wounds are not symbols of failure. They are doorways of transformation. And the world does not need you to pretend to be unwounded. It needs you to be real, to be awake, to be free. Because the moment you stop hiding your healing, you become a mirror for others to begin theirs. You show others what is possible when we stop pretending and start remembering. You become a living permission slip for liberation. You were never meant to numb yourself to survive. You were meant to feel so deeply that the numbness becomes unbearable. That's the beginning of awakening. When you finally say, I can't go on like this, not from despair, but from truth, from the soul's insistence that there is more, that you are more, that there is a deeper way to live than just existing in performance, in patterns, in pain. That sacred rebellion is the beginning of remembering. And once you remember, you cannot go back to sleep. Not truly. Once the soul has been seen, the ego no longer holds the same power. Once the truth has touched your breath, the illusion begins to dissolve. That is why healing feels like loss sometimes. You are grieving the version of you that no longer resonates. You are saying goodbye to an identity built in fear. And though it may ache, it is a holy ache, an ache that says the time has come to come home. Home. That is what you are returning to. Not a place, not a role, but a state of being. A state where you no longer strive to be what you already are. A state where you stop fighting the flow and begin to float in it. A state where you don't just know you are divine you, live it, breathe it, embody it. Not with words, with presence. Not with force, with truth. You are not healing alone. The entire universe is conspiring in your favor. Every ending, every silence, every trigger, every moment that made you crack wide open. It was all the divine hand moving you inward. It was all life saying, you're ready to return. You may not have seen it at the time. You may have cursed it. You may have wept through it. But your soul knew. Your soul always knew. And that knowing, that eternal, untouched, radiant knowing is still inside you, waiting for your yes, waiting for your breath, waiting for you to look into the mirror beyond the tired eyes and the worn out story and say, there you are. I remember now. You don't need to become her. You already are her. You don't need to find him. He never left. You only need to strip away everything that was never you, and therein the rawness, in the silence, in the unguarded presence, you will find your original face. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they move through. You are not your pain. You are the presence that held it all. You are not the identity you built to survive. You are the soul that was never in danger. Healing is not a mountain to climb. It's a remembering that you were already on the summit, but your eyes were closed. You don't need more. You need less noise, less fear, less pretending. You don't need to chase peace. You need to stop running from yourself. The soul is not complicated. It is clear, still, honest. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And it is whispering now, you are already home. Let it all fall away. The masks, the roles, the need to be understood. Let it fall until only your truth remains excellent, radiant, free. That is healing. That is remembering. That is who you are. And now you remember.
In a world that never stops moving, stillness becomes the rarest form of wisdom. We are taught to chase, to climb, to hustle, to conquer. But the soul, your eternal essence, is not impressed by noise. It doesn't race. It doesn't strive. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And in the hush between your thoughts, in the quiet after the questions, that's where the soul begins to speak. Clarity is not something you achieve. It's something you remember. You were born with it, wrapped in simplicity, bathed in presence, untouched by confusion. But as the world's volume turned up, as expectations piled upon you, like bricks on the chest of your spirit, the clarity was buried beneath it all. Not lost, just waiting. Waiting for you to be still enough to feel it again. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness. It is the moment when you are no longer doing life, but being life. And in that being, the fog lifts. You begin to see, not with the eyes, but with the heart. Not with logic, but with knowing. The kind of knowing that doesn't require proof because it is truth. Most people confuse clarity with answers. They think they'll feel clear once they figure it all out, once the past is explained, the future guaranteed, the pain justified. But clarity is not born in solving. It is born in surrender. When you stop clenching the steering wheel of your life so tightly, when you stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world, something miraculous happens, peace walks in. And where peace goes, clarity follows. Let us remember the truth known by sages and saints. You are not here to figure life out. You are here to feel it, to open to it, to soften into it like water returning to the sea. The need for control is the ego's obsession, but the soul has no such hunger. It doesn't need to control. It already belongs. It doesn't need to prove it already is. It doesn't need to race. It already rests. Your inner chaos is not because life is chaotic. It's because you've been avoiding the sacred space within you, the silence. You've been filling every crack in your day with noise, distraction, validation. But clarity doesn't rise through effort. It rises through stillness. It doesn't come from pushing. It comes from pausing. And in that pause, you meet yourself again. You were never meant to carry the world on your shoulders. The world is not yours to control. It's yours to experience, to love, to witness, and to let pass through you like wind through an open field. When you sit in stillness, you remember this. You remember that life is not a storm to be survived, but a breeze to be felt. And in feeling it fully, you return to the truth that you were never disconnected, just distracted. Distraction is the greatest thief of clarity, not because it takes something from you, but because it turns your gaze away from what was always there. Like the sun hidden behind clouds, your light never left. It was only obscured by thought, fear, busyness. And when you finally get still, the clouds part, not all at once, but gently, respectfully, like a curtain rising to reveal your own divinity waiting patiently behind the veil. The stillness does not shout, it does not force, it invites, and it waits, always waits for you to accept. Not when the to-do list is done, not when the circumstances are perfect, but now in the breath you are taking, now in the space between your thoughts, now in the sacred pause where the mind rests and the soul wakes. And in this waking, something changes. You stop asking life to be different. You stop begging the moment to become something else. You begin instead to listen. To listen not with your ears, but with your entire being. You begin to hear the language of the soul, the language of stillness, and it tells you what no amount of striving could ever reveal. That you are safe, that you are loved, that you are already whole. Stillness is not a task. It is a homecoming, a return, a remembrance of who you were before the world told you who you should be. It is the falling away of every label, every mask, every identity constructed from fear. And as it all falls, what remains is essence. What remains is God not outside you, but in you. As you, moving through you, breathing you, being you. And in this sacred space, clarity is no longer something you seek. It becomes what you are. Let the world keep spinning. Let the chaos outside dance its wild, unpredictable dance. You don't need to control the storm. You only need to find the eye of it, the center. And that center is always still, that center is always you. So sit, breathe, be, and in that stillness, let the illusions dissolve. Let the old stories, the ones that said you're not enough, not worthy, not capable, let them fall like leaves in autumn, no longer needed for the soul's blooming. You are not your past. You are not your fear. You are not the noise of the world. You are the silence beneath it. You are the space between the notes, the rhythm that gives the music its meaning. You see now why clarity cannot be forced? Why it resists the grasping of the mind and instead flows through the openness of the heart? Because clarity is not information, it is transformation. It does not fill you, it empties you. And in that emptiness, you finally feel light enough to rise. You become like a feather surrendered to the wind, not passive, not powerless, but free. Free from the illusion that you need to have it all figured out. Free from the belief that healing requires effort. Free from the ego's insistence that you must earn peace. You don't earn peace, you return to it. You don't achieve clarity, you allow it. And all of it begins in stillness. So if you are weary, sit. If you are confused, sit. If you are broken, grieving, lost, overwhelmed, sit. Not to escape, not to avoid, but to arrive. Stillness is the most radical arrival. It is where you meet life without agenda, where you stop trying to be anything and remember you are already everything. In stillness, the soul speaks, and it speaks in a language beyond words, a language made of feeling, of knowing, of being. And what it whispers is this: you are already home. What if the very thing you've been searching for has been searching for you too, not in the noise, not in the chase, but in the quiet you keep avoiding? What if stillness is not just a spiritual practice, but a doorway, a sacred threshold where the divine and the human meet, where the veil thins and truth is no longer something you read about, but something you feel vibrating through the marrow of your being? There's a reason the great mystics sat in silence. There's a reason the prophets wandered the desert. There's a reason the sages withdrew from the noise of cities and climbed mountains to find God. It's not because the divine is far. It's because the world is loud, too loud to hear the subtle beauty of the eternal that whispers from within, too loud to feel the sacred pulse of presence moving in every breath, too loud to hear the soul say, I'm still here. I never left. You just forgot how to listen. You don't need a new path. You need a deeper presence. You don't need to run forward. You need to fall inward, into the holy quiet where your spirit waits patiently behind the storm of your thoughts, into the inner sanctuary where truth does not arrive dressed in certainty, but in peace. And that peace, that gentle presence, is the language of clarity. It does not bark orders or deliver perfect blueprints. It simply clears the debris so the light can shine again. And you have always been that light. The confusion, the anxiety, the overthinking, those are just clouds. And clouds, no matter how dark, can never extinguish the sun. The sun just waits. Still, constant, glowing behind the storm, your soul is that sun. Not in need of fixing, just waiting to be seen again. The world has conditioned you to think answers are earned by effort, that truth is something you must chase, something out there just beyond your reach. But the spiritual life is not about chasing anything. It is about remembering what is already within. It is the sacred reversal, the path not of gaining, but of shedding, of unlearning the noise. So you can return to the knowing. And it takes courage to be still. It takes courage to stop distracting yourself with the next thing, the next goal, the next identity. Because when you finally sit in silence, you meet yourself, not the self you show the world, not the self you've polished and performed, but the raw, trembling, holy self that has been whispering beneath the surface all along. Stillness is not easy. It confronts, it reveals, it humbles, it strips away everything that is false. It forces you to see the parts of yourself you've buried beneath achievement and validation. But it is in this seeing, this honest, sacred witnessing that you begin to return home. And that homecoming is clarity. Not the clarity that gives you all the answers, but the clarity that says, you don't need them, you already are the answer. There's a kind of wisdom that lives in the quiet. It cannot be found in books or sermons or lectures. It is not taught, it is remembered. It is the wisdom of the trees that do not try to grow, but grow. The rivers that do not try to flow, but flow. The stars that do not try to shine, but shine. What makes them divine is not effort, but essence. And what makes you divine is not your doing, but your being. You are the tree, you are the river, you are the star, and you are never more aligned with the truth of life than when you are still enough to simply be. Sit with that. Let it break open the armor of your striving. Let it dissolve the illusion that your worth is somewhere ahead of you. Let it remind you that clarity is not the reward for working harder, but the revelation that comes when you finally stop. And the moment you stop, truly stop, you start to see, you see that your worth has never been in your productivity, that your value has never been in your accomplishments, that your purpose is not something you chase, but something you remember. And what you remember in the stillness is this: you are already whole. You are already held. You are already here. And here is where everything begins. When the mind gets quiet, the heart begins to speak. And it speaks in a different language, a softer one. It doesn't argue or compare or worry. It doesn't say when or if or someday. It says now. It says yes. It says I am. And this I am is the most powerful prayer you will ever whisper. It is not a begging of life to become something else. It is a full-bodied return to what already is. It is the dissolving of ego into essence. It is the surrender of resistance into rest. It is the moment you stop pushing the river and let yourself be carried. So sit. Sit like the mountain sits. Sit like the moon watches. Sit like the ocean waits. Not to escape life, but to merge with it. To merge with the still, unshaken, eternal pulse that has always been inside you. Clarity does not always come in lightning bolts. Sometimes it arrives like dew, soft, slow, and silent, but it nourishes, it renews, it awakens the parts of you that were never dead, just dormant. And in that awakening, you come alive, not as someone else, but as more fully yourself. There is no rush. There is only rhythm, the rhythm of breath, the rhythm of being, the rhythm of love that has no opposite because it was never conditional. The stillness teaches this. It shows you that underneath all your trying is a truth that never needed to be earned. You are the clarity. You are the peace. You are the stillness. And when you stop long enough to feel that, not just understand it, but truly feel it, you begin to live, not from fear, but from presence. Not from need, but from fullness. Not from ego, but from soul. And the soul, the soul does not rush. The soul knows. The soul flows. The soul rests in the silence because it remembers what the mind forgets, that God is not somewhere else. God is here in the stillness, in the breath, in the now. There's something sacred about silence that terrifies the ego. The ego feeds on noise, on proving, achieving, calculating, defending. But the soul is nourished by stillness. The soul doesn't compete. It doesn't grasp or argue, it simply is. It breathes with the universe. It aligns with the eternal. It remembers. And the more you allow yourself to be still, the more you realize how loud your life had become. Not just in volume, but in expectation. Every moment stacked with demands, every thought laced with pressure, every breath taken like it had to accomplish something. But stillness says otherwise. Stillness says, come as you are. Let go of the armor. Lay down the need to be more than you are in this moment. It's enough. You're enough. You see, clarity doesn't need you to be perfect. It only needs you to be present. Present enough to witness what's been underneath all along. Not the story of who you think you are, but the truth of what you've always been. The presence behind the personality, the awareness behind the thoughts, the light behind the identity. When you return to stillness, you return to yourself. Not the self shaped by fear or comparison or past wounds, but the self with a capital S, the infinite spark that existed before the world had a name for you. And that spark doesn't flicker, it burns steady. Even when the mind is in chaos, the soul remains calm. Even when life is uncertain, the spirit stays whole. But we forget, we get caught in the swirl. We mistake the turbulence of our thoughts for the truth of our being. And in that forgetting, we suffer. We chase things that cannot fill us. We climb ladders that lead nowhere. We try to quiet the noise with more noise, but the answer has never changed. The way home has never moved. It waits, always waits in the quiet. So sit in the discomfort if it's there. Sit in the emptiness if that's what rises. Sit even when the mind screams that you should be doing something, especially then, because the moment you stop running from yourself is the moment you begin to heal. Stillness is not passive. It is the most radical form of alignment. It is choosing to return when the world tells you to run. It is saying, I trust the silence more than the shouting. And in that trust, clarity emerges. Not as a lightning strike, but as a soft unfolding like petals opening to the sun, one breath at a time. Do you feel it? That gentle remembering that you don't have to strive to be worthy. That quiet hum beneath your rib cage that says you're not broken, just buried. That sacred pull inward that whispers, stop trying, just be. That's clarity rising. That's your soul stepping forward after years of waiting for you to pause, to listen, to come home. Because the soul cannot shout over the ego. It will never fight for your attention. It will simply wait. It will wait while you exhaust yourself with proving. It will wait while you perform for love. It will wait why you carry burdens that were never yours to carry. And when you finally put them down, when you sit in the stillness long enough to hear the silence, it will gently say, welcome back. There is no punishment for forgetting, only pain. The pain of being disconnected from your own light. But that pain too is a teacher. It is not here to destroy you. It is here to guide you not toward more doing, but toward deeper being. Every ache, every doubt, every unraveling moment is a breadcrumb leading you back to the stillness where clarity lives. And when you enter that space, something sacred happens. You stop asking life for explanations. You stop begging the universe to make it make sense. You begin instead to trust. Not because you have the answers, but because you no longer need them. You begin to feel the subtle but unshakable truth that you are guided, that you are carried, that you are enough. The world outside may still be loud, but the world within becomes your sanctuary. And from that sanctuary, everything changes. Not because life changes, but because you see it differently. You see it through the eyes of presence, through the lens of love, through the truth of your soul, which was never confused, only unheard. And so you walk differently. You speak with more softness. You listen with more depth. You move with more grace. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're no longer trying to be anything else. You are finally being what you are, a sacred thread in the fabric of existence, a note in the great song of creation, a soul remembering its light. Stillness teaches you that nothing is missing, that you don't need to chase alignment. You need only remove the noise that's hiding it. You don't need to create purpose. You need only feel the pulse of it that's always been within you. Let go of the idea that clarity is something to be earned. It is not a prize. It is a presence. It arises when you are brave enough to stop, open enough to listen, soft enough to feel. It flows in like a tide, not when you command it, but when you invite it. And it washes away everything that was never true. In the stillness, illusions dissolve, masks fall, armor melts. You become transparent to yourself. And in that transparency, there is nothing left to defend, nothing left to fix, nothing left to prove. There is only truth. And the truth is that you are already whole. You always have been. Stillness does not change your life by adding more to it. It changes your life by taking away what never belonged. The false urgency, the inherited fear, the borrowed dreams, the narratives handed to you by a world that confused motion from meaning. Stillness is the great purifier. It doesn't decorate the cage, it dissolves it. And what's left when the cage dissolves? Freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't shout or need permission. The kind of freedom that doesn't come with flags or declarations. The kind of freedom that lives in your breath. Quiet, sacred, unmistakable. It's the freedom of no longer being pulled in 1,000 directions. The freedom of finally hearing your own voice again after years of listening to everyone else's. The freedom of remembering that you are allowed to choose peace over performance. When you begin to live from stillness, you no longer crave validation in the same way. You no longer bend yourself into versions that fit the room. You no longer ask people to fill the void that only presence can hold. Because you've tasted something deeper. You've touched the well beneath the world's thirst. You've returned to the source, not in theory, but in living, breathing reality. And from that place, everything changes. You love without attachment. You speak without trying to impress. You listen without waiting to respond. You no longer react, you respond. Because you are no longer driven by unconscious stories. You are awake now, rooted, still. Clarity strips away the unnecessary. It reveals the essence. And when you see with essence, you don't just see more clearly, you see more kindly. You look at your pain with tenderness instead of judgment. You hold your past with compassion instead of shame. You see other people's anger as fear, their cruelty as confusion, their arrogance as woundedness. And you forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Stillness births this kind of clarity. Not the kind that just makes decisions easier, but the kind that makes the heart softer. The kind that lets you walk through the same world, but with entirely new eyes, eyes that see through illusion, that recognize divine patterns in chaos, that find peace not in the absence of noise, but in the presence of awareness. There is a sacred intelligence moving through this universe. Call it God, call it source, call it life. It is not random, it is not cruel, it is precise, gentle, profoundly aware of what your soul came here to remember. But it doesn't force you. It invites you. It will not wrestle your will to the ground. It will wait. And it waits in the quiet. You want to know who you are? Then be still. Don't just sit with the question. Become the space that no longer needs to ask. That's what stillness does. It doesn't answer your questions, it dissolves them. It doesn't fix your brokenness, it reveals that you were never broken. It doesn't give you new ideas, it clears the fog so truth can rise. Like the sun rising, not because it's told to, but because it's what it does. You are not here to be a performer on life's stage. You are not here to be constantly visible, constantly relevant, constantly productive. You are here to be real, to be awake, to be so rooted in truth that nothing outside you has the power to uproot you. And that kind of rootedness comes not from willpower, but from stillness. It's in stillness that you remember the rhythm of life, the inhale and exhale, the expansion and the return, the rise and the rest. You were never meant to run endlessly forward. You were designed to pause, to reflect, to listen, to let the tide carry you back inward before you reach again outward. The clarity that comes in stillness is not about making better plans. It's about no longer needing a plan to feel safe. It's about trusting the unfolding, about letting go of your white-knuckled grip on how you think it should go and leaning fully into the mystery. Because the mystery is not your enemy. It is the birthplace of grace. Do not fear the unknown. Fear missing it. Fear becoming so busy, so distracted, so addicted to noise that you never hear the invitation hiding beneath the surface of your life. The invitation to come home, not to a house, not to a person, not to a belief, but to the timeless space within you that has never been touched by fear. That place is still. That place is whole. That place is where clarity lives. And once you live from that space, the world no longer controls your peace. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer fear endings, you trust transitions. You no longer resist what is, you flow with it. And in that flow, everything sacred becomes visible again. The ordinary becomes holy. The mundane becomes miraculous. And so the invitation remains, be still. Not because it's trendy, not because it's spiritual, but because your soul remembers the language of silence. And it's time you did too. You won't find yourself in the next breakthrough, the next relationship, the next success. You will find yourself when you stop running. When you sit in the quiet with nothing to prove, nowhere to get, no one to become. And in that sitting, you will hear the oldest truth echo through your being. You are always it. You were always enough. You are always home. So now, as the breath slows and the noise begins to fade into the background once more, you find yourself standing not at the end, but at the return. The return to what was always real, always waiting, always whispering beneath the rush of the world. This is not a conclusion. This is the moment when all the seeking dissolves and only the stillness remains. And in that stillness, everything becomes clear. You don't need to make life perfect. You don't need to fix every flaw or heal every ache before you are allowed to be at peace. You are allowed now. Not after the storm in it, not once clarity comes, but because clarity comes when you stop demanding it and begin allowing it. The stillness does not erase the journey. It blesses it. It gathers every shattered moment and folds it into a single quiet truth. Nothing was wasted. Every detour was a teacher. Every heartbreak was a mirror. Every silence you avoided was a door back to yourself. You ran, yes. You stumbled. You forgot. But the soul never left you. It simply waited. And now you are ready to listen again. And What does the soul say? It doesn't give you instructions. It doesn't hand you a map. It doesn't require that you understand. It only asks that you trust. Trust the pause. Trust the breath. Trust the invisible rhythm that life has been moving to all along, even when you couldn't hear the music. Let the stillness be your sanctuary now. Let it be your teacher, your guide, your anchor, not once in a while, but always. Let it meet you in the morning before your thoughts begin. Let it hold you at night when your fears return. Let it be the space you return to when the world demands your performance. And you remember, I am not a role. I am not an idea. I am not what others need me to be. I am presence itself. And presence does not perform. Clarity is not a light that flickers on and off depending on your worthiness. It is always shining. It is always speaking. It is we who turn away, we who drown it out. We who run, not because we are lost, but because we forgot we already belong. And now, beloved soul, you remember that silence is not empty, it is full. You remember that surrender is not weakness, it is power. You remember that the pause is not the absence of progress, it is the birth of purpose. You remember that nothing outside you needs to change for you to return home. Because home is not a place, it is a presence. And it lives in you, right here, right now. It always did. So walk on, not with certainty, but with clarity. Not with all the answers, but with the knowing that you are allowed to not know and still be deeply, beautifully whole. Speak less to convince. Listen more to understand. Create not to impress, but to express. Love, not for what it brings back to you, but for the miracle of what it brings out of you. You do not need to be louder, you need to be truer. You do not need to be seen more, you need to see more. You do not need more power, you need deeper peace. And all of it begins and ends in the stillness you were once afraid to sit in. Now you know better. Stillness is not where you lose yourself, it's where you find yourself again. Not the self the world taught you to perform, but the real self, the quiet self, the eternal self, the self that does not need to be explained, only remembered. And so let your next breath be not a rush toward answers, but a return to presence. Let your next moment be not another chase for clarity, but a sacred pause where clarity finds you. You are not here to race time. You are here to touch eternity, and you do so every time you choose to be still. So be still now, not because the world told you to rest, but because your soul remembered it could. Let this be the moment you stop waiting to arrive and realize you already have. Let this be the end of searching and the beginning of being. Clarity has come, not because the world changed, but because you did. Because you stopped, because you listened, because you remembered who you are. And who you are is enough. Always was, always will be, and now you know it. Clarity comes in the stillness. And in that stillness, you are finally free.